DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're joined once again by Steve Cleveland, former BYU and Fresno State basketball coach. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, fellas.
Steve, I'm curious. Watching the NCAA tournament unfold round after round, but especially Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four. Utah would like to get back there. BYU clearly has massive aspirations. Obviously, the rules have changed a lot in the last 3 years since Florida Atlantic and San Diego State were going to a Final Four, and now we've got a bunch of 1, 2, and 3 seeds, all power schools and big budgets, but there's different theories on how to build a team. Duke's teams are really young, and they've blown some leads. They're loaded with future pros and lottery picks and talent. Michigan's got an older team. UConn, man, they've cracked the code. This is 3 finals in 4 years. Unreal. What have you learned watching this tournament? How would you build a team if you're trying to build an elite team going forward?
Well, you can't have elite teams unless you have elite players. And I think the recruiting process, it takes time. And you look at, Dan Hurley and what they've done. He's won 23 and 24 national championships. He was at Rhode Island before he was at UConn. And this is his 3rd national title game in 4 seasons. So it's about recruiting. It's about being sustained. How do you sustain this kind of success? And it starts with getting good players and obviously having great coaching. But when you look at Coach Hurley, and I think they're 34-5, he's playing for his 3rd national title game, as you mentioned. They hit a miracle shot. I mean, we wouldn't even be having this conversation if you don't hit that miracle 3-pointer and find themselves where they are today. But UConn's always really been strong inside. They're really good defensively, and that's the mantra with any really elite teams, that strong inside play and tough defense. I think, I'm not sure, but I think they're in 19th or 20th straight Sweet 16, and which is pretty incredible. And here we have Michigan again, another blue blood program that has a chance to win its 17th national title. It's hard to believe that's even possible, but Michigan did what they had to do in beating Arizona. It wasn't even a close game. They packed the paint and just made them shoot threes and perimeter shots. And Arizona's down 48-32 in the first half, and nobody probably more surprised than Tommy Lloyd with what took place. But the interesting thing enough is you would have think Michigan, with all their success they've had over the years, they're going for just the program's 2nd championship. They had the Fab Five in '89, and now today in 2026, they've got another chance. But I was surprised, as I was just kind of looking through my notes, that Michigan had only won 1 championship. So it'll be interesting. I'd kind of like to see. Michigan have an opportunity to continue what they're doing. Hurley at UConn is incredible, and 3rd national title in 4 seasons. So I'm not really committed to who would I like to see win this thing. But when you look at Michigan winning 17 national titles, and then you see UConn, the success they've had over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, it makes for good drama and good theater, and I expect it to be a great game.
As I was watching that game against Arizona, I mean, it's just stunning because, we've watched Arizona play so many times this year, obviously in the conference here with our 2 teams in the Big 12, and they just look so good. They stumbled 1 week, lost a couple games, and that was it. And I thought that they really had everything. And to be basically taken out of the game almost like right from the start was really amazing. I tend to look at things from a local perspective. And, how did BYU match up? And one of the things that struck me is this Mara kid, 7'3" or whatever he was. And BYU really didn't have a post presence where you could just throw it into a big guy, get the lob, whatever, however it might be, tip-ins, and they haven't had one for 2 years since Kevin Young's been there. And I get his holy grail, according to his own phrase, is shooting, and I support that 100%. But you look at a kid like Mara, and I mean, he only had 26 points, I think, in that game. How important is it for BYU this next season to be able to have a big man who can actually score?
Yeah, you know what? The longevity of a program and their success long term, and the three ball is a big deal in this generation and knocking threes down. But for me, and just having my experiences in coaching over 35 years, is that I always wanted to try to get the ball inside on a pretty regular, consistent basis. And number one, it got you to the free throw line a lot, and got you to a position where you could score at the free throw line versus, in transition or whatever the circumstance might be in terms of the scoring. But my entire coaching career was focused on getting the ball in the paint and getting to the free throw line and putting yourself in a situation where you have an opportunity to score, at the free throw line or sideline out of bounds or baseline out of bounds plays where you're close to the basket and the percentages are in your favor. And I think great coaches do it a lot of different ways. I'm looking at Coach Hurley, and here, he's playing for his third national title, but he's also a guy that just pounds the ball inside, and it's focused on, pounding the ball inside and scoring inside, and then just defending every possession. And that's what UConn's done here the last few years. They're 19th straight Sweet 16. To have that kind of consistency and that kind of success, it starts inside, and whether you're pounding it inside offensively or you're just defending it inside, that's where your success comes from. And that's what I think UConn's been able to do. And again, like I think I mentioned earlier, 19th straight Sweet 16, that's founded on inside play, inside scoring, and elite defense and inside as well.
Yeah, I think it's 19. It might be 19 overall, Steve. I don't think it's in a row because they went out in the second round last year.
Yeah.
And Hurley had to rebuild. All he got at the end of Ollie's term, he missed too. So, but it still is phenomenal success. And I think it's 6 going on, trying chasing 7 titles now since 1999. It's a remarkable run. And that goes back to what I was asking first about, like, how you build a team right now. The decisions our current local coaches are going to have to make in the offseason. Duke, especially with Boozer, that guy was just awesome around the rim. He was unstoppable. And Arizona had multiple guys. They were completely dedicated to scoring inside. Both Michigan and UConn can score inside. Is that one of the lessons that has to be learned from the tournament? Like, you have got to be elite scoring the ball with multiple guys, multiple ways inside of 5 feet.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think, you kind of live and die with the three sometimes. And we've watched great games and great, guys win championships with the three ball. But really, to be successful long term and to have it to be sustainable, you've got to get the ball inside. And there will always be the Braylon Mullins miracle three-point shot that gets UConn into the Final Four and all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, sustainability comes from defending and from getting the ball inside, getting to the free throw line. Those are the merits of a national championship teams that, in and year out, great teams get to the free throw line, they defend, and do those things that are just sustain a program long term. And so none better at it right now than UConn, though you can't dismiss Michigan playing for their 17th national title, but they just overpowered Arizona early. And I remember Coach Tommy Lloyd was talking about this after the game, and he said, I was shocked. I would have never thought that we'd be down 48-32 in the first half. And but again, one of those blue blood programs in Michigan going for the program's second championship. Interestingly enough, as much success as Michigan's had, The only time they've won a national championship was in '89 with the Fab Five. So we know Michigan has an elite program, but it's interesting to note that it's only happened one time. And so for Michigan to win this thing and to get themselves back to where they were many years ago, it'll be fun to see. And it'd kind of be fun to watch Michigan going for the program's second chance and second opportunity to win a national championship.
Yeah, I can remember. I've told this story before. We used to sit right behind the bench, and those seats are now for the high rollers. We sit up in the nosebleeds, but you could hear what was going on, and I heard many of your conversations, and I'm paraphrasing, but you just said that if anybody takes an outside shot before looking to get the ball inside, I think it was Arujo at the time, basically you were going to bench him. And you did, I think, the following season make a change at point guard for somebody who was a little bit too shoot happy and replaced him with somebody who didn't seem to have the same individual talent but fit in better, and your team was better. And so you preached that and you lived by that. And it'll be interesting to see if BYU can get that inside presence. And I want to go back to this Mara kid. I mean, he spent 2 years with UCLA. I mean, he didn't do anything. I mean, he played 13 minutes a game, and then he goes to Michigan, and he is averaging like a 12-7, and then in the semifinal game goes off. How do you explain that?
I don't know. It's interesting, and pressure. There's expectations can create pressure, and here we have a young man that he's not everybody. He's not the focus of the team. He's not the focus of this run until recently, and he's a guy where there isn't a great deal of expectations, and sometimes when there are no expectations, and guys just play within themselves. And all of a sudden, you get this thing going. I always felt like getting to the free throw line would help players get their confidence and have it be more sustainable. And I think that's what we saw happen here. Is that all of a sudden you have a guy that nobody knows and it really hasn't had that kind of an elite success. And maybe sometimes when there's fewer expectations, we find guys that are able to do things that those that are expected to do them can't. And so you're right. It was kind of fun to see what took place there. And but I always felt like if you could get to the free throw line, if you could get to a circumstance and a situation where you were there was a calmness about you, you could breathe. And I tell the players all the time, just take a deep breath. We talk about this with free throws especially, and we practice this in in practice settings in preparation for game settings. And it's amazing. You watch guys shooting free throws, a lot of times you'll just see a deep breath, relax, nail it. And I think that, I know when I was coaching, I always felt that the guys, it was important. Whatever your routine was, 2 dribbles, take a deep breath and shoot. And I think that I'm not sure that that's somebody that people talk a lot about that, but I know as a coach and wanting to get my guys to be able to be relaxed and able to breathe and just be comfortable and confident is a big deal at the free throw line, or guys hitting a big 3 or whatever it might have been. You have to be able to be in control of yourself mentally and emotionally and physically, and that deep breath really puts guys in a position, and men or women sports, it just puts them in a position where they're able to be successful by just taking that deep breath and relaxing and making big shots in big moments.
What do you think the value is of getting somebody who can make the team better defensively and anchor them inside? Even if offensively, maybe they don't have a great post game, they get you layups, they get you dunks, they get you putbacks and free throws. When they had Matt Harms, opponents shot 41% against BYU 5 years ago. They only had him for 1 season. If this BYU team had only let opponents shoot 41%, what might they have done instead of giving up 45%? And the Utes were at 48. What might they have done? What's the value of that player who's got the size to intimidate guys inside?
Well, yeah, it makes a big difference, and because everybody's ultimate destination as a coach or a player is to attack the rim. And when you can guard that with bigs or athletic players who can protect the rim through defense, you're going to be a lot better. And I think as I prepared and as we prepared for games, a big part of it, having a guy like Arugio when we were, playing, and he was skilled in different ways, but his presence inside and his ability to protect the rim made us a more successful team. And, you're looking at, we're looking at two really good teams here in Michigan and UConn, and, national championships at stake here. And there are teams that are pretty good defensively. And I think that when you can do that, I know when as I coach and the teams that I coached, that it put us in a position to get to the free throw line more often. It put us in a position to defend the rim more often. And subtle things that oftentimes don't even come up in the statistics. But that's when you win championships, and that's when you have long-term success, is when you can get to the free throw line or get to the rim or protect the rim. All of those things that happen within 5 or 6 feet of the rim are really what make the difference in winning championships. And I think that, when I look at Utah and Michigan here, and there are teams where Michigan just packed the paint. I mean, that was their scheme of things when they played Arizona. They just packed the paint on defense. And Arizona was down 48-32. And, we mentioned earlier, Tommy Lloyd was shocked with this, but really Michigan prepared for this in the right way. And now they're playing for a second national championship. So whenever I coached, my experience of watching basketball or coaching basketball, the idea and the thought was always, the goal was always to get it to the rim, to block the rim. I mean, everything was around. And so as we watch this game tonight, oftentimes it'll be early on where guys pack everything and make it really difficult to score in the paint. And it's that unusual guy that steps up, that hits a 3 or 2, that opens the game, gets guys to breathe a little bit, and all of a sudden you've got to go extend that defense now because now they're hitting threes. And so the combination of being able to defend in the paint and be able to score in the paint is oftentimes a result where threes are allowed and open, and somebody, the player hits a 3 or a 2, whatever the circumstances were, or a big free throw, that calms the team down, and they're in a position now where they can relax and breathe and be a better player and have a better performance.
We saw the president come out with an executive order. I don't know anything about politics and what that means. To me, the idea of a one free transfer and then a red shirt if you want to leave after that and what have you, and some other stuff. I think it's a starting point to have some discussions for some potential guardrails and some rules and regulations, I guess. What do you think?
I like the word you use. I like the idea of having guardrails, and whatever it's going on in our life, that whether it's sports or politics or whatever the nature of it is that being protected and having that protection, whatever the realm of our life is and what's existing. But for me personally, we need guardrails. And you start looking at sport and politics and people that are in control of those things and the expectations that are put upon these people. I love the word guardrails. I'll share an experience. I used to travel a lot and recruiting and doing things, and I can remember being on a recruiting trip in a very mountainous area, and they didn't have those guardrails. It was kind of like you those windy roads. You guys have been on them, and you're going back and forth, and it always made me really nervous. you know. And then when I found, it was just a stretch of maybe a few miles where there were no guardrails. And I was very anxious and very nervous. And but when I got into the terrain of the mountains and I was making this drive, those guardrails gave me a sense of confidence and gave me a sense of peace and a feeling that whether it's in my personal life or it's a political life or it's in sport, those guardrails really are make a difference in our own lives. And I need that in my own life. I need that with raising my children. I need that with the coaching that we did and my relationships with my wife and my family and in our country. And we just have to have those things. And it's a really delicate environment to balance. But I agree with you. We need those. We need those politically. We need those in sport. We need them in everything we do in life. Is to protect one another, to make sure that we get the best experience that we can have, and not at the expense of harming or hurting or putting people in a situation where that there are potential issues and potential problems. So, yeah, I love guardrails. I think that's a wonderful way to put it. And it doesn't matter what we're involved in. I mean, hey, I think as a parent, you guys, you've had families, and when I look back in my life and you look at your life and our relationships with our spouses and children, am I ever so grateful for the people in my life that protected me and protected our children. And, I'm forever grateful for people who live their lives that way and in a very protective way help us to have a better life and a better environment to live in.
Steve, we appreciate it as always. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, guys. It'll be fun. Championship game is going to be great to watch.
Steve Cleveland, former BYU and Fresno State basketball coach, join us right here on The Zone. DJ and PK, more in a moment. David Locke joined us last week, and it was late in the show, so we didn't really get a chance to react to it much, but he threw out a couple interesting things. And there's a timeline. We got an Ace Bailey timeline in our mind, and I think mine moves pretty quickly, but, man, David Locke's moves much more quickly than that. We will get to that next. Stay with us.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
You have the box score in front of you?
I do.
How many minutes did Kyle Filipowski play?
Phil played 24 minutes.
How many minutes did James Harden play?
39 minutes.
It's not a good sign. You're in Salt Lake City. The Jazz are not trying to win. That's exactly why the Jazz made the trade they did. The Donovan Mitchell trade of knowing you're only going to last so long in the playoffs. You just didn't know how far it was going to take you, but you knew it was not going to take you to a championship, which Jazz fans will remember. And it's actually a type of pain that when you're not experiencing it, you might forget about it. But it's this is not going to end the way you want it to, but I guess you'll just watch the playoffs as long as they last. And they said, we want to actually raise the ceiling to a point where maybe there's a championship, and the pain to get there is going to be significant, and that's what these 4 years have been, and it is.
I was always in the camp of you either do it or don't, and they went into the rebuild, which I think will eventually pay off.
Catch Jake and Ben weekdays from 10 to noon on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
DJ and PK on Friday, near the end of the show, we had David Locke on for his weekly visit, and he was asking us, when do you think Ace Bailey is going to be ready to take over as the number one option on the team? And after we answered, 2 or 3 years or whatever, he said, how about next February? Middle of next season, Ace Bailey could be the number one option. Possible? Impossible. Probable? Improbable. What do you think? Cam says, with his talent, it's definitely a possibility. The Jazz knew he was raw coming out of college, but the kid's come out and put in the work. I cannot wait to see what a full offseason with the Jazz staff will do. I'm predicting he'll be an all-star by year 3. Sign off on that right now, wouldn't you, PK? Take all-star year 3? It's done deal.
I don't see it.
Too early? Too much? Too soon?
I think him being the number one option by February, that's fantasy land. No way. There's just no way.
I thought in 3 years.
No.
I think Keontae's going to have the ball in his hands, and Markkanen and Jackson are going to get a lot of shots. It'll be an important piece, but I didn't see him as number one by the middle of next season.
comparisons are to Donovan Mitchell. And when Donovan Mitchell came in the league, the Jazz, who'd they have on the team? They didn't have anybody who was capable of scoring. They had nobody. Alec Burks, Dante Exum, Favors, Gobert, Rodney Hood.
No.
I mean, I love Jonas Jerebko as much as anybody,
Huh.
but that wasn't happening. Howell, nothing but Neto. Sure. That's a nice little clever nickname. That was the year that David Stockton got in. And we remember him. Was he going to take over? No. So Mitchell was able to do that because they didn't have anybody else. Hayward had just left. And this next season, there is no way that Markkanen and Jaren Jackson are going to be deferring to Ace Bailey. There's just zero chance of that happening.
Joe Ingles isn't walking through that door. Joe was looking to get other people's shots.
They're going to look at him like, kid, you still got to pay your dues. That doesn't mean you're going to have big games, and they're not going to freeze him out. I'm not saying that. But Markkanen been waiting all this time, and now you're going to want him to defer? I want Markkanen to become the man next season, and with that becomes the responsibility that you don't sit over there in street clothes for 40 games like you've been doing every freaking year practically, and your nice hair is all looking modelish. I'm done with that. No, this guy's getting almost $50 million a year. He needs to buck up, and he needs to get his body in shape or mentally, whatever it takes, to be playing at least 70 games next year. And the gloves are going to come off as far as what Markkanen needs to do next season. I mean, we're done with he's a nice guy, and he likes it here, and he likes the outdoors. I couldn't give a flying you-know-what about that. He needs to show up, and he needs to ball at least 70 games unless he has some major injury. The days of him sitting there and smiling on the bench, I'm done with that. And that's got to stop. And he needs to have that mindset because he certainly has the skill set to go out there and be one of the, 15 best players in the league? Yeah, where much is given, much is expected. And he needs to ball next season. And with that, that means everybody else takes a secondary role. Because you can only have one man be the man, and it needs to be Markkanen.
Think there's a chance they gave the money to the wrong guy?
I don't know. There's a chance for anything.
Yeah. You think there's a likelihood?
If you have a broad question like that, yeah. I believe in his skill. I mean, I follow this kid. His first, his only year in college, obviously, with Arizona. And I thought he was coming to Utah, too, until Arizona did what they did, and he went there. I mean, I don't blame him for that. But this guy has made millions. And I know some people don't want to hear about the money, but I do. And now is the time, or next season being the time. And this team has a chance to be really good, and they need him out there doing his thing.
The money's unavoidable. You only have so much of it to work with. More than ever, the NBA has drawn up that collective bargaining agreement. It's hard to weasel your way around and find more. You get up against the second apron, and we've seen teams make hard decisions because they don't want to pay that luxury tax. So as much as you don't want to hear about the money, you've only got so much of it to work with. If you give it to the wrong guy, either because he isn't good enough when he plays or he doesn't play enough because the best ability is availability, then you give it to the wrong guy.
Well, I'm not ready to say that by any stretch. And then Jackson, I'm expecting a big season out of him.
Expect him to do what he does, 20 and 10.
I see no reason why not.
Show up again, do it again.
Yeah. And so with that in mind, that reduces the opportunities. Cooper Flagg goes to the Dallas Mavericks, and I'm watching that game last night.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just he's the man. He's got the ball in his hands. He's taking all the shots, and great.
Yeah. He shows up, and it's the Donovan Mitchell situation where Hayward had just left, so the shots are available, and he shows up, and Doncic is gone, so the shots are available. Kyrie Irving is hurt, so the shots are available.
And he's pushing 6'10", so he's got all the skill in the world, so that's great. I've got no problem about that. And Ace Bailey, I just don't know if that's the right thing for this team next season to have that type of freedom. In order to be the number one option, that means you have the freedom to do what you see fit. And to me, that is more rebuild mode for Ace Bailey. And I'm being told we're done with rebuild mode. So I don't want to muzzle him or limit him, but at the same time, it has to be within the context of winning. If he can do all that in the season starts the end of October, so you basically have November, December, January, so you got about close to 4 months, and let's just say it's the end of October or the end of February, when Locke's in February. And the thing about
the All-Star break,
what Locke is talking about is he has to balance what he's told with what he says publicly. And he doesn't say stuff a lot that is without some foundational information. But he can't come out and say it because he's an employee of the team. So he has to straddle that line, and I respect that line, and I don't ever want to put him, certainly not in a public situation. If it's off to the side, that's another story. But I don't ever want to put him in a public situation because he doesn't have to come on with us every Friday, but he chooses to. So I don't want to put him in an awkward situation where he is giving up information that the powers that be don't want to be given up, right? So he has to straddle that line, and I respect that line that he has to straddle because he could just say, hey, I'm not coming on anymore, and I don't want that because we enjoy talking to him, and I think the listening public hears what he's saying. But I think he says stuff based from what other folk might say. Maybe in this case it's just his own observation, him and Ron Boone killing time before a game or in the coffee shop or on the airplane, whatever it might be. I get that. I've been there. I've done all that stuff. And so I can appreciate that. But I just think that under the circumstances, man, that just screams rebuild. And I don't know that I want that. And I don't think anybody wants that. We want to see this team make the postseason. But I think he can still make significant progress. But we're talking about the number one option here. We're not talking about number two.
I get why you bring up the rebuild. I just don't think that's a possibility. This has gone on so long. They're starting to get pushback from the ticket-buying public and from the fans. And the owner is as big a fan as anyone. Danny Ainge was joking and laughing because it was serious about Ryan asking him, when are we going to win, when are we going to win? That was in like year one. Ryan wants this as bad as all the fans. He grew up a Jazz fan playing junior Jazz basketball. There's a reason they're running those campaigns during the game. So I think if Ace Bailey's the guy next year, it's because either there's injuries and guys can't play, which will be its own problem, or because he's excelled. I don't think they're going to say, hey, let's make this guy the guy, and we'll go through the growing pains with him. I'd be surprised. I'd be really surprised if it plays out that way. He's got to be good enough to demand it. And the thing about Locke is that Locke not only talks to people at practice and, in the building and all that, but he's been doing this a long time. He knows all the broadcasters around the league. He knows a bunch of scouts around the league. So I wonder how much of this expectation from Ace comes from inside the organization. But you're right. He doesn't just fire stuff off, There's other people watching stuff around the league, and they're telling him stuff, and then he mulls it over. So it's some combination of stuff he thinks, and he may or may not be up in the night, but it's also stuff that a lot of other people think. And they may or may not, be on point and on target.
Yeah.
And they're betting on Ace getting a lot better.
And I am too. I see no reason. Yeah. I don't know what his work ethic is. We'll find out. I'm hoping it's strong. I have no reason to doubt that it isn't. But he has an opportunity to really solidify himself as a big-time player next season and then beyond that as that all-star. He asked us what we thought, and to me, Gordon Hayward, was an athletic guy, about this, maybe an inch or two shorter, not quite as athletic, but I think few people are quite as athletic as Ace Bailey. But Hayward, when he was here in his prime, was a very good player, and I think that Ace Bailey's ceiling is higher than Gordon Hayward's, which that means he's an all-star. He left here as an all-star. It went south with the injury and other circumstances at Boston, but forget about that. What he was here, and he was legitimately an all-star for that one season, and if he would have stayed and had his health and everything, I think he would have continued to be that. So I see by year 3 or 4, certainly by 5, that's who Ace Bailey is. And then I've got these other guys here, Markkanen and Jackson. If they stay, you never know what's going to happen. But if they stay, they're not going to be. They may be a little bit beyond their absolute very best, but not that far. Which means this team has a really great opportunity to be good for the next 5 to 7 years.
The interesting with Markkanen will be when he's on the floor. And there's a lot of other guys who can score. Because back to your point about Mitchell, he's playing with guys who either could shoot but didn't really want to shoot, like Joe. Guys who couldn't shoot, like Gobert. Guys who really need to be within 10 feet of the hoop if they were going to shoot, like Rubio. I mean, they were what is it, ham and egg in it. They were really like trying to make all the pieces of the puzzle fit. Markkanen can go get 20 a game. Jackson can go get 20 a game. Keontae George can go get 20 a game. So the interesting thing is how all of that gets balanced. I'm leaning towards there's nobody at 25 a game next year. That was partly a product of you better force feed Markkanen, and he's done it, but he's done it on teams where there just weren't that many guys who could score. And he just hasn't played that many games this year with Keontae, and he hasn't played that many games this year with Jaren Jackson, to be sure. So we haven't really seen him, but when there's more guys who can score at a high level, and it's pretty easy to see how there's 4 guys who could get 20 points on any given night next year, how are any of them going to average 25 or whatever, which is where Donovan Mitchell went. But again, Mitchell he's playing with a couple guys who don't want to shoot, a couple guys who can't shoot, and pretty soon he's getting a ton of FGAs.
Yeah, I mean, in order to score, you got to get FGAs.
All right, DJ and PK coming up at the top of the hour. Riley Jensen is going to join us. He set social media on fire. Do you picture Riley as a guy who's really getting in the middle of it, PK? Because he got in the middle of it. And he's got people agreeing with him. He's got people lecturing him. He's got people calling him out. Get to all of that with Riley coming up at the top of the hour. Stay with us.
Whirls around and down.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone is your exclusive home of the Utah Jazz. And we want to send you to the Delta Center to see the Jazz in action. Listen every Tuesday for the Jazz Ticket Tuesday Sounder at 30 past the hour, every hour, all day long. And if you're caller number 12, you'll be on your way to an upcoming game.
Buy one, you'll get one free.
It's Jazz Ticket Tuesday, every Tuesday throughout the NBA season on your radio home for the Utah Jazz. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. And now, your Rocky Mountain Chevy dealer strong play of the weekend.
No balls and 1 strike. And here's a drive out to right from Raleigh. Adele's back near the wall. He leaps, and he caught it! Joe Adele! There's a drive to right. Adele is back. He's at the wall. He leaps up. He got another one! Joe Adele! What a night! Lead. Here's Crawford with a fly ball to right toward the corner. It's Joe Adele again near the foul pole. Leaping up! Did he catch it again? He fell into the crowd, so it's a home run. They called him out. He did it again.
Not once, not twice, but 3 times, Joe Adele taking the home run away. Maybe they needed the ball 20 feet in the air and 20 rows into the stands, PK. Make it a no-doubter. Otherwise, Joe Adele put on the cape, fly up there and grab it.
Yeah, that goes to what I said, that every ballpark needs to have a fence in which the player can leap up and make the game-saving or the home run robbing catch. None of these, except for Fenway, we'll give him that. And I guess Wrigley, we'll give him that. But the rest, you got to have it where the player can leap up and make the catch because it's one of the best plays in the game.
As someone who grew up going to games in a stadium that had a 17-foot wall, I completely agree. I was robbed of people robbing catches. They finally put in a smaller interior fence, and that was much better.
Yeah, and I mean, you can tell that your life, it's been a hard struggle for you.
Yes, that's a true story.
Right.
True story. Not seeing all those home runs robbed really, it altered my childhood, let's be honest.
Yeah, and you're just now healing.
And I'm glad you used the present tense because I am still healing. Yes, good point. Thank you, PK. So that's the Chevy Strong play of the game. Know it today after 3 o'clock. JJ and Alex call for it, and you can win fabulous prizes. Championship basketball game tonight. Michigan has stormed through this tournament, annihilating everyone. They did play a 13-point game with Bama. That's the close one. They've won by an average of 21, and they just completely humiliated Arizona. That was such a beating of what was expected to be a mega showdown. Duke, Arizona, and Michigan had separated as the top 3 teams. We knew well before the tournament they were going to be 1 seeds. So UConn upset Duke. Michigan annihilated Arizona. Here we are. Is there any reason you expect Michigan to pull this off? Dan Hurley magic? Or, why UConn would pull off this upset with Dan Hurley magic, or it's Michigan. Not kid ourselves. We know what we've seen for 5 games, and we know what we're going to see in the 6th one.
Well, I think in any game with shooting being somewhat fickle, that could determine the outcome. So I'm not sure about what to expect. But Michigan is certainly on a roll that has been extremely impressive. I couldn't have been more impressed with what they did against the Arizona Wildcats because I've seen them play so many times, and that game was certainly over by halftime. And then in the second half, my gosh, they were just laughing and lighting it up. It was crazy to think that a team of that caliber, the Big 12 winner, I think it's a bad look for the Big 12. You got embarrassed on a national stage. And Yormark, I know he likes to spin the line and it sounds good, but you don't have the second best league anymore, at least not this season. Yep. Maybe you can recapture it next season.
Didn't have it last season either. The SEC clearly had the best NCAA tournament last year, and the Big Ten has clearly had the best tournament this year. It looks like something, at this point, you can just argue it gets passed around. And you can say over the last 3 years, it's been 3 different conferences.
I don't, it's more than who wins the title, though.
I agree. It's about having how many teams you have in the Sweet 16, in the Elite 8, and the Final Four. Yes, it is more than just having the champion. And The Big Ten had 6 of the Sweet 16. So we nearly had an all Big Ten final, but UConn took care of Illinois. All right, DJ and PK, when we come back, Riley Jensen joined us. He stirred it up with his comments about a couple local high schools, and it definitely resonated. Made some people angry, made some people think he is our champion. Take the flag, run forward, get it done for us, Riley. He'll explain next. He'll join us. Stay with us.
Derek Overstreet, founder of the New Millennium Group. We're a financial planning firm. We have advisors standing by right now to take your call. 888-999-6370. The reason you're going to want to call is we're going to help you retire 3 to 5 years before you thought possible. The way we do this is by putting together a step-by-step plan. So if you're one of those people listening and you'd like a plan in writing, give us a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370, or go to utahsfinancialplanner.com.